I'm just going to be taking you over Welcome to the Jungle. Sorry if my audio isn't as great. I don't have my microphone at the moment. Yeah, let's just get into it. The first idea we had is the drums because I mean drum and bass. Um, so we started off with these like jungle loops, so these jungle drum loops that I just found on Reddit. So I think first was the shaker. So yeah, as you can see, a lot of these samples are pretty dry because at the end of the day, they are like electric samples. They don't really need much doing to them. Um, there wasn't anything that really stood out as harsh or something we didn't need in there. So actually, most of these are pretty dry. Um, to be honest, I think I could have done a bit better there. I feel like some of the sorry, some of the different samples could have probably had different cuts in the EQ to probably give the mix a little bit more space for the sounds. But this was at very early stages, so I kind of just chucked them in and forgot about them. So that's our shaker. We also have a ride here on top of that. So yeah, one thing I did do with this one is there is a space designer, so we just added a bit of reverb. That is quite a lot. Another thing I probably should have done here is put the reverb on a bus, just to make controlling the reverb a little bit easier. It was probably going to be a lot easier for me in the future mixing this, but at the time, wasn't something I was thinking of. So yeah, there's another thing I could probably critique myself on, just being more organized in these projects, putting things in buses, maybe grouping things, because everything's just completely everywhere in this piece. Nothing's organized. A lot of things just have random names, so like the samples, they're just the name of the actual sample that I found online. I've not named any of them. So yeah, probably organization with this project could be a little bit better to make the mixing process a lot more easy and straightforward. Here we have our kick. First of many, there's about 3 different kicks in this piece. So that's our first kick. The one, it really, this one fit the most with kind of like the jungle sound that it started off with. Obviously, the intention was like a Prodigy kind of sound. So we wanted kind of like an older drum and bass sound for the very beginning. And then it kind of, as the piece develops, it becomes more of a modern, like EDM style drum and bass piece with more electric sounds. So this is our next loop. So yeah, you can see it's got that really fast percussive sound. No EQ or compression going on here, to be honest. Same idea, space designer, just add a little bit of wetness to the sounds, just made it sound a bit more wider. A lot of these sounds don't really have any kind of like processing on them, to be completely honest. I was pretty happy from the start with how they sounded. Snare. So we actually did do a little bit to this snare. I think there was something a little bit harsh about it. So I'll just play it. So if we go on the EQ, we've actually cut out all of the lows, and there was a few harsh frequencies here. This is about when Ashton started coming in and helping me with different parts of the piece. So he was helping me with different EQs and compression because I wasn't really using it at this stage. So yeah, that's kind of where Ashton has his input. He helped a lot with different elements of the mixing. And also this was his idea. We have another snare that plays after this. It's I'm not sure where we got this idea, but it's actually slightly pitched down. And then we've got, if we go here, it is actually slightly panned to the right, but I think we did that just in the audio, so it doesn't actually say it's panned here. We'll also have a bit of stereo spread on it just to give it a wider sound, just because we liked it. So yeah, for the most part, that is the very beginning drums, so I'll give them a little play at first, if I can just select them all. Whoa. Okay. So they're the drums. so there's not really much to say about them. There wasn't really much mixing that went on there. Next thing we added was the bass for this bit. So yeah, you can see it has like a really creepy kind of sci-fi kind of sound. So if we go into Alchemy, it's just a saw and a sine wave that we just chucked together. So if I play that, you can see it sounds kind of boring, a little bit flat. It didn't really fit the overall sounds. So then Ashton adds this step effect on it. I'm not sure entirely what it does, but it made it sound really spacey and wide. So this is with and without. So yeah, there was originally a compressor on it. We were going to sidechain it to the kick, but I think at some stage we did decide that it just didn't work, and we ended up removing it. So yeah, that's it for the first bass, and this is probably the most important part of the song. We have these little breaks in here where we have like a vocal chop saying like 3, 2, 1 or welcome to the jungle. So the way we made that is it's actually a like a text to speech, like a robot voice. You just type what you want it to say in and it just says it for you. So it has a lot of processing on it there, if you can see. I'm just gonna go ahead and really quickly play it without any effects on it.
3, 2, 1.
So yeah, you can see we that very last number we flex time all the way out to really stretch it. It sounds pretty horrible without any effects, really dry. But it worked for what we wanted it to do because we were going for a really robotic kind of robot sound essentially.
Welcome to the jungle, jungle, jungle.
So yeah, that's kind of it with how it sounds dry. So I'll go on to what we've added to it. So first effect was a bit crusher. That just kind of gave it a more retro sound. So I'll do a little with and without comparison.
3, 2, 1.
So yeah, that's with, and this is without.
3, 2, 1.
So you can see that it just adds a little bit of crunchiness to it. Sorry, we're on your nose. But yeah, it just adds a little bit of it just adds to the kind of sci-fi effect that the bass kind of started, I guess. So that kind of just something extra to add to it. But the main effects were probably this pitch correction, which is basically if we go back, sorry, it's just set to one note, which is just the key of the song, A, at this point, because it does change further in the song. But I've literally just got it set to only the A, so the voice just stays on that A note for the entire thing, and that gave it a really like robotic sound.
3, 2, 1.
So yeah, you can already see we're starting to get the sound that it has. So yeah, that kind of in terms of processing, that was about all we needed to get the sound we wanted. It already sounds super retro and robotic. So yeah, let's go on to the other things we've added. So we've got an EQ here just to cut out all the lows, because the text to speech we used did sound a bit rumbly and muddy. So we just used an EQ to just cut it out. That made it sound a little bit more clean.
3, 2, 1.
Also gave the mixing a little bit more space, which we didn't actually consider with these drums. So this was further down the line when Ashton got involved. Compressor, just bring that in. This probably wasn't very necessary, but I think we just added it to give it a bit more of a heavy sound. See, we've absolutely slammed the compressor there.
3, 2, 1.
So yeah, I think the main goal of using the compressor with this was just to give it a more heavy sound. It was never really to change the dynamics in any way. It was just to really change the tonality of the voice. I think when it has like a more slammed heavy sound, it just sounds a little bit more drum and bass-esque. It's probably the best way to describe it. Yeah, it really helped kind of like Sorry, just trying to find the words. It really helped bring the dynamics of the piece forward, I guess. You know, it kind of made the piece sound a lot more big and like heavy. So it made it added to that kind of feeling of just like, you know what, I don't have a word to describe that, but it just makes it sound big is probably the best way to describe it. Okay, so echo. So yeah, we do have, I'm not sure why we have two echoes on this, but yeah, we do. So
3, 2, 1.
So yeah, you can see that just gave it a little bit more space in the mix. It did sound a little bit dry without any kind of echo and reverb. Just quickly check what this other reverb is for. Oh right, okay. So this echo actually stays on the whole time.
3, 2, 1.
And then later in the piece we have this second echo, which is a little bit slower than that one. It just makes the jungle on the end of the vocal chop sound a little bit. It just lets it ring out basically. So if I just show that.
Welcome to the jungle.
Play that solo just so you can hear it. So yeah, you can see we've got two different echoes on the vocals for like two different sounds basically. We're not using it here, I don't think. So yeah, you can see in the automation I've turned it up here. So we only wanted that to ring out in certain places basically. So yeah, I think it's pretty unique use of echo where we have different timings on the echo for different sounds. You can see after that we kind of just use it at every other bit. We only wanted it to ring out on the Welcome to the Jungle bit. I think the bit here where it says 3, 2, 1, it didn't work. We didn't want it to ring out in the piece. It was just really about like the development in dynamics. It slowly gets bigger and bigger throughout the piece. We wanted to have that echo come in a little bit later, just so it has like a building up kind of feeling throughout the whole piece. So I believe for this little bit here, oh no, we've got one more bass. Okay, so this bass, we kind of wanted to kind of replicate the sound of a guitar while still having like a digital kind of sound. So I'll just play that now. So yeah, you can see how heavy that sound is there. I'll just go through what we've got on here. So we have one compressor acting as a sidechain. So actually, this sidechain actually doesn't have any effect in this bit because it is tied to a different kick which comes in about here. So I'll just play this kick here. So yeah, you can hear that sidechain kind of pushing the sound back. Yeah, it was just because I wanted this kick to sound a little bit more heavier. We've kind of got this like rock-esque kind of break here before the full-on like modern drum and bass bit comes in. Yeah, so yeah, the main goal for that sidechain was just to make that kind of section sound a little bit more powerful. There's not really much else to say about that compressor. So here we have another compressor, and this one was used as like an actual compressor. You can see we've got not as high as a threshold, but a very, very high ratio, and we've got the distortion set to hard. That was just to give it an extra bit of crunch. There is virtually no dynamics in this sound. We just wanted it to sound basically heavy and crunchy, and that was one of the first steps into doing that. Next we have overdrive. When we looked into the Prodigy, we realised that a lot of their different sounds, they use overdrive a lot basically. So we definitely wanted to implement it into our piece. So you can see I've cranked the drive all the way up. The tone's pretty high. I'll do a little with and without. So yeah, you can see there's like there's not a lot in the mids before adding the overdrive, and then the overdrive just basically just crunches it all together and really adds that kind of presence that it didn't have before. Next we have an Archetype plugin, which is Josh's plugin. This was kind of like a last minute thing. It just felt like it was missing something. It sounded a little bit cheap, to be brutally honest. And so Josh had his Archetype plugins from here. So we decided, you know what, we'll just add it in, see how it sounds. I'll do a little with and without. So yeah, you can see before those plugins, I think it was a little bit too powerful. So yeah, it just added something extra to it. Made the sounds sound a little bit more professional. So yeah, next we have our EQ. So you can see the highs in that were way too powerful. So at this point, we just decided to cut them all out. So yeah, you can see that kind of gives the sound a little bit more control in the mix. It sounded way too powerful before. Obviously, you know, power was kind of what we were going for in the piece. But, you know, it just got a little bit too much for this sound. So we needed to have that EQ to just kind of get the sound back under control. And then the final thing we have here is a stock Logic amp. So yeah, it doesn't seem to be making much of a difference, but I think it just gave it more of a like guitar-esque sound. So yeah, I think that's about it for this sound. So yeah, so next, actually, before we go on about that, this right here was a sound I made in Serum months before Welcome to the Jungle even happened. We've called it Fat Wob for some reason. I have no idea why we've called it that. This was just in a random project that I made. We liked the sound of it, so we just bounced out the sound I made from Serum and just chucked it into this piece as like a kind of intro kind of sound. So that, you know, when it has the kind of really the real synthy fat bass at the very beginning, contrasting with this kind of jungle sound, it kind of gives the listener like, oh, you know what's coming up, you know what's about to go down, basically. It just hints to what's coming at the end of the piece. So yeah, I'll give that a little play. So yeah, you can see how heavy that is compared to this bit here. But it made a really good intro sound. I'm not sure why, but we really liked it. So we just thought, why not? We're just going to chuck it in here. So the next thing to probably talk about is Josh's guitars. So we didn't want this piece to be completely electronic. We wanted to have some acoustic elements, especially, you know, looking back at the Prodigy, they had a lot of guitars. So we wanted to include it. So I had Josh do a few guitar recordings. The first thing that happened with this recording was we had Josh use his guitar plugins at home to do the first bit of kind of processing with this guitar. So you can see dry, it already has quite a bit of distortion on it, sorry. So yeah, I'll just give it a little play. Actually, one thing to mention is this is like the build up before the guitar. So what we've done is we've actually reversed it here before coming on to the main guitar bit here, which is obviously not reversed. So I'll play it from here. So yeah, that already has quite a lot of processing on it. It's really distorted. It has a really like Prodigy sort of sound. But yeah, we decided it sounded a little bit dry in the mix, so we wanted to add a little bit more to it. So you can see we've got two channels here, one pan to the left, one pan to the right. These are exactly the same audio, so at this point it didn't really make a difference. It just sounded like a stereo. It just sounded centered at the moment because we hadn't made any difference between the two. But I'll start with this one. So we have so the first step to this little reverse build up here was to add like a little cutoff on a filter that kind of fades into the guitar. You can see I've added a lot of resonance there, which I do quite a lot with this kind of like build up sound. It just makes the filter sound a bit more heavy, like it makes you notice it a lot more. I just overall really like the sound, so I'll give that a little play. So you can see it kind of swooshes into the guitar solo there. So yeah, that's about it for the filter. So I'll move on to compression. This is pretty light. I think that was just to give it a little bit more presence in the mix. Just add a slight bit of compression. So if I just fast forward to the bit that isn't filtered. So yeah, you can see it kind of controls those dynamics a little bit more. Archetype. This was just, honestly, we just thought, you know what, it's supposed to be Prodigy. There's not enough distortion here, so we're just going to go ahead and just chuck another plugin on it. Oops, just hit the table then. So yeah, we just went for it. We like the sounds. So I'll go through what we've got here. So we've got an overdrive turned on. We've got it kind of cranked on the tone. The drive isn't that high because I think we decided it was going to be too much at that point. You can see the gain's kind of set in the middle. We turned the bass all the way down because we had that kind of bass sound we made before under it. We've got the mids and trebles pretty high, and then we've got like the presence about in the center. We didn't really do anything with the graphic EQ. It was kind of a quick thing. We've got two rhythm mics set here, and they're kind of both set slightly off center, just to add a bit of wideness. That's a lot. We do that a lot in Archetype, where we have the mics slightly out of the center, just to make it sound a bit wider, basically. One more thing we're missing is the EQ, so I'm pretty sure this is Ashton's EQ, but we just cut off the lows and we've added a lot of highs, a lot of mids, just to give it more like kind of color in the piece. So onto the right guitar, it's basically the same. Yeah, the compressor's the same, filter's the same. The only difference is Archetype, so we've got the Tim Henson version on here. It has like a slightly spacier sound, just to like differentiate between the left and right. Made the guitar sound a little bit wider, and we didn't really have enough time to do another guitar take, so it was just something we chucked on just to make the guitar sound a little bit more spacey. So yeah, that's about it for guitars. We have another guitar thing here that we'll talk about in a minute, but first I'll talk about this little sweep here. So I just used this to kind of transition into different sections because everything kind of felt a bit too abrupt before that. So I'm just going to play this with everything because there's not really much to talk about with mixing for this bit because it's dry. But yeah, it literally just worked as a way to transition between sections. So yeah, so that's what that does. I think we'll just talk about here. We have some slightly different drums. Still got the same snare. So here we have what seems like a shaker sample that just comes in and out every now and then, just so that the drums kind of have a little bit of a different sound for each section. So we've just kind of put that in different places to kind of give it a bit more of a syncopated sound. So I'll give that a little play. So yeah, Space Designer on there again. So we've got pretty low wet, so we just wanted it to be like a slight bit of reverb. We didn't want too much at that point. This should have been on a bus again. We weren't really thinking about it at the time. And then we have another bass sound in here. So on Alchemy, it's just a sine wave. So this was originally just going to be like a plain old sine wave that we just have in the background to add a bit of bass. But as you can see, that is not the case. So the first thing we added was a spreader, and that kind of, it sounded like a phaser when we added it in, but we just liked how it sounded, so we kept the spreader on instead of swapping it with the phaser, because we preferred how the spreader sounded on the bass over adding like phasing. The bit crusher just basically cranks the drive up, kind of makes it sound like a square wave. Well, basically turns it into a square wave looking at this. Yeah, so it just adds a bit more depth to the bass. It made the section sound a little bit more full. I think the easier thing to have probably done is probably just change it to a square wave in Alchemy. But I guess kind of the resolution sound where we have that kind of retro crispiness to it kind of added to the bass as well. So yeah, that's for this section. Another thing to mention is this little drum break we have here, so I'll just give that a little play. So yeah, you can see that has a really heavy gritty sound, and the way we did that is we've got another bit crusher and we've cranked the drive all the way up, so we've just distorted it like crazy basically. And then we have also a compression with a really high ratio, and we've turned the distortion onto soft because I think hard distortion was a little bit too much. But it does have a really nice sound for a little break in the piece. Yeah, it's just something different, to be honest. It made a really good little transition section. For this kind of section, it worked a lot better than the sweep did, because the sweep sounded a little bit softer, and we wanted a really heavy transition between this section and this section, so that I think played a better role than the sweep did. So moving on to this bit, we have we've basically kind of half timed the piece, not in the BPM, but you know, just writing it. It's kind of like a half time section to give it a kind of rock sound. So I'll give that a little play. So I'm pretty sure the only different sound we have in here is this clap here. You can see it's a really distorted clap. This is the same clap I used in my B5 FIFA piece. I really liked how it sounds and how aggressive it sounds. We have a bit crusher on this as well, just to basically drive it through the roof, give it a really crispy, crunchy sound. Actually, we'll move on to Josh's guitars for this piece, for this section, sorry. So for this one, we have like a really wide sound, and we wanted to basically phase the guitar, but we ended up using a stereo spreader again, just because we preferred how it sounded over the stock Logic phaser. We just think it sounded a little less basic, is probably the way to put it. So I'll do a little comparison. So you can see it sounded a little bit too flat without that spreader. Compression, we've gone for the classic VCA. I think we just went for it because it sounded a lot heavier, and that just works for guitar. You see we've got the ratio at 6.8 to 1, minus 22 threshold. So not super heavy, at least compared to other things in this piece, but it's definitely doing a lot to the guitar. So yeah, just adds a little bit extra to the guitar. This is Ashton's EQ as well. He's kind of cut out a bit of the lows. I think that the bass here, there was like a bass to the guitar, and it just sounded a little bit muddy, so we kind of cut it out there. We've kind of boosted the mids here to just give the guitar more presence, which we do a lot with our guitars. And And then another thing to mention is this sound I talked about earlier. We do have a different melody for this section. So yeah, you can see on its own, you can really hear that sidechain working as well. Another thing to mention is this kind of sweep, like riser effect that we added. Personally, I think we could have made our own, but we settled on this like Cymatics one that we like the sound of. It really added like a sense of build up before the very final like section, the final drop. So I'll give that a little play. You can kind of see that it gets quiet before it gets louder, and that just really added to the piece, made the drop sound a lot more massive basically. And then you can see the drum pattern also changes here, so it just gets faster and faster before the very big drop. So yeah, another thing to mention about this kick is you can see I've kind of scooped it a bit just because the sample itself didn't sound very bassy. So I just kind of made things a little bit scooped so it had a deeper sound. Another thing to mention here, the just before the drop we have another Welcome to the Jungle. But you can see I've taken the echo out, and then we have an EQ here, cutting out all the lows and highs to kind of make it sound like a tiny speaker. So just before the drop it has like a really thin sound before the massive bassy drop comes in. We've also got a vocal transformer on it just to pitch down the vocals a bit, just to make it sound a little bit different from the other Welcome to the Jungle effects in there. Personally, my favourite bit, the most exciting bit of the piece is our kind of serum sound here. So yeah, I'll just give that a little go. So we have a saw and triangle wave here, and I think it's called Reese Mess. Yeah, we'll go with that. I'll just solo it. So yeah, you can see that has a really distorted sound. So if we go on the effects on Serum, we've got Sinefold distortion, and then we've kind of boosted the highs a little bit here. We've got a pretty heavy ratio on the Serum compressor. Got a teeny tiny bit of reverb, and then we've got some filters going on here. I think it was just to get rid of some of the sounds we didn't really want in it. We've got a sidechain on it. We could have done this in the LFO in Serum, but I think we just found it easier to use a sidechain plugin to do this. The sidechain plugin is called STFU. I'm not going to say what that stands for. You can probably already guess for yourself. But it basically cuts out the sound depending on when I set the sidechain to work. So if I play that with and without. So yeah, you can see it was just like one long sound, and it didn't sound as exciting. It didn't sound as rhythmic. So that kind of plugin added a lot to the sounds. We also have a compressor on it. We have really hard distortion. We've really cranked the ratio and threshold, made the sound absolutely massive. We also have a slight bit crusher on there. I'm not entirely sure what the logic was behind that. I think I just used it a lot of the time. But yeah, you can see we've probably used it to kind of crank the drive a little bit. We could have used clip distortion to do this, but I think at the time we just used bit crusher for anything distorted related, and then we just turn up the resolution to get rid of that retro sound. That was probably a bad idea. I should have just used the regular distortion plugins. But yeah. We also have another sound laid under the Serum patch. So you can see that's just that is basically just a sine wave bass that just added an extra like thump to the sound. We originally had this layered on top of it as well, but we didn't actually like the sound of it. I'll have a look what we've done with it. We had like a saw, square wave, and a metallic wave in Alchemy. We felt the sound didn't have much going on in the mids, so we tried to add something back, and then we decided, you know what, this doesn't sound any good. We liked it how it did before. But yeah, it just shows the progress in the piece. You know, everything we didn't like, we just kind of muted off so that we could show how we kind of progressed with this piece. We have a different kick and snare in this part of the song. So yeah, you can see they're really, really heavy. I might have that leveled a bit too loud looking at it, but you know what? It worked for the piece. It has a really kind of modern EDM sound where you have that really crispy, high, clicky kick. I use this sample quite a lot for drum and bass pieces. We've got a compressor. We've really cranked the ratio on that kick. And then we've got set the distortion to clip there to really make the kick sound really, really heavy. So I'll do a little with and without. So yeah, you can see it added a lot more body to the kick. In fact, that was quite a difference, yeah. So you can see we were experimenting with different compressors there. We originally had this EQ here, but we didn't like it, so we've just turned them off. I think this is Ashton's EQ he added to the kick, where he's kind of scooped it as well, where we have a bit extra on the highs, a bit extra on the lows, and then we've kind of cut out all of the mids. Just because obviously we have vocals in this section as well, and we wanted to kind of clear out some of the room in the mids for the vocals to really stand out. So yeah, that's our kick. Our snare, we kind of have a compressor going on here. Not as heavy as the kick. It's the platinum one as well, so it's not as a heavy sound. And then we have a spreader, a stereo spreader, because we kind of wanted the kick and the snare to like contrast each other. So you have the kick come in, which is like dead center, and then we have the snare kind of traveling to like kind of sounding outside the ears instead of just straight centered. We wanted it to kind of have like a left and right kind of sound. So the spreader kind of added a bit of wideness to it. It didn't sound as centered, and it made a really cool contrast with the kick. So it kind of adds like, it kind of makes the drums feel like they're moving in and out of the headphones, which I think sounds really good. We also have another like synth sound here. So you can see how that has a very what's the word, retro sound. So we've got the acid wave from Serum, and then we have like a filter here, if I can just get to it. So we've kind of got an LFO filter cutoff thing going on here, where it comes in and out really quick. It kind of added like a wobbliness to the sound. FX, we've got a little bit of a filter. We've got a really heavy distortion here. We've got the Lin fold, I think it's called. And then we've got the hyperdimension effects compressor. We've got the multi-band compressor turned on in Serum. And then the EQ, we've kind of scooped it because we wanted this to act as a bass. And then here for the little break with that bass, we have another like jungle loop. Just so that this piece doesn't sound super modern, we have a little bit of contrast between the modern and the older sounds of drum and bass in this kind of piece. Section, sorry, I don't know why I was saying piece. So yeah, in terms of just the sounds, that's about it for this section. So I'll move on to vocals. So these are Ben's vocals.
I'm so fly like eagle, life and moving, and I might be a sequel. Life up, down, low, high like seesaw.
So yeah, we didn't have long left to do these vocals, so we kind of just got Ben to come in and quickly record something. We didn't use, I think we used a Behringer C3 for these vocals. Probably not a great decision. It's not the greatest mic, but I think for the sound of this piece, it sounded really, it kind of worked. Um, yeah, I think the kind of tonality of the mic, no, the tonality of Ben's voice worked with the mic. Luckily, it was just literally it was just the first mic we saw, and we're like, "Here, Ben, just quickly record something." I've hit the desk again, but yeah, we just needed something quickly done, and I guess we were really lucky to have a mic that for some reason works with Ben's voice. Um, so yeah, we'll go on to, first I'll do noise gate. So we've got a little bit of a noise gate just to cut out the hissing, because I think we gained it a little bit too high. So there was a little bit of hissing in the actual vocals. So if I can find a little bit where we've not cut it off.
Be that peak on inspiration, came on off your door. You never seen this before. You never seen this before. You never seen this before. Welcome to the jungle where we have the fungal.
So yeah, you can kind of see there, slightly after that vocals, there is a little bit of leaking. So we just, most of the hissing we've actually just cut out anyway, just to completely get rid of it. But originally we did have noise gate to try and get rid of it. But yeah, it seems like we've just cut it out actually here. If we can just play it here.
Where we have the fungal.
So yeah, you can kind of see it cutting out the hissing there. But for the rest of the piece, I'm pretty sure we just completely cut it out. Compressor, you can see how heavy we went with this. So for this, we wanted a super slammed heavy sound with the vocals. Even distorted, I guess. So you can see we've got the distortion set to soft. So basically what we've done is we've basically drove the vocals so hard into the compressor, it's basically distorting them, which gave it a really heavy, crunchy sound that we actually ended up really liking. A couple of our other tracks that we've done like really heavy compression on, I haven't been able to justify it. It was literally just me trying to get a sound I wanted. I mean, when I first started using the compressor, I used to just slam it because I didn't know what I was doing. But here, I think using the compressor really heavy actually worked in our favour. It had a really nice sound, a really heavy, crispy sound, really distorted. So yeah, that really worked. Another thing to mention is the vintage VCA compressor. We like to use this one whenever we want a really heavy, crunchy sound, just because it kind of gives off that kind of vintage, really heavy sound. Next we have a multipressor on the vocals. Yes, I can hear you crying. This was just to, again, have a really heavy compression on it. You can see we started off with a hard compressor preset because we didn't really use the multipressor that much at that point. But you can see on here we've kind of dragged it all the way down, so you have quite a heavy compression going on there. Saturation, that was just to add even more distortion. You can see we've got it pretty high there, and if I play it,
I'm so fly like Eagle Life and moving, and I might be a sequel life.
So yeah, you can see that light coming on, so it is starting to distort the vocals. EQ was just to cut out the harshness in the vocals, so there were quite a few like not very nice frequencies in the vocals that we just needed to cut out. We've also done a bit of a low cut on the vocals to try and get rid of the kind of muddiness in his voice. We originally had echo on it, but you can see we've just completely turned it off. I don't know why we didn't just remove the plugin, so I might do that now anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much it for vocals. Another thing, actually, one more thing. We have little breaks here where we have 2 layers of vocals. So if I just play them on their own.
You've never seen this before.
So we have 2 vocal chops here. So we have one pan to the left, one pan to the right, and they both have a vocal transformer on them that's set slightly different for each one to make it sound a bit wide. This kind of technique's used a lot in drill as well, where they have little breaks where they have these super like evil sounding like low pitch vocal like edits just like at a break before like a drop or something. And especially for Ben's vocals, where he does like a lot of trap music, a lot of drill music, it really worked for his voice. And I think implementing it into drum and bass, it surprisingly worked. So yeah, the final ending of the piece, I'll just go over.
Welcome to the jungle where we have the fungo. Welcome to the jungle where we have the fungo.
So if I just go up here, you see we've brought this the kind of square wave bass back in. The kick from the very beginning, that comes back in. We've got the original snare.
Welcome to the
And then we have this kind of step effects bass that Ashton made. Come back in there. And then we have the Welcome to the Jungle text-to-speech sample come back in.
Welcome to the jungle, 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 jungle.
And then we've actually layered that on top of Ben saying Welcome to the Jungle.
Welcome to the jungle where we have the fungo. Jungle, jungle, jungle.
So yeah, we've got that. There isn't actually much to say more about this section of the piece. We've already kind of gone over all the mixing that is implemented in these sounds. One thing I will say is that this last bit here, we originally had the text-to-speech say the very last Welcome to the Jungle, and then we swapped it out for Ben's voice just because we thought it had a better sound for the end of the piece. One more thing to say about vocals is we've kind of automated it down a little bit here just to make the kind of outro sound a little bit softer. And then if I can find it, we somewhere in this piece, I'm not sure where it's showing up, but we do have an echo on this final Welcome to the Jungle.
Welcome to the jungle where we have the fungo.
Which is actually not showing. I don't know why. This must be an older save of the project, but I'll just explain it really quickly. We have a similar we had a similar echo that we had on this Welcome to the Jungle, where it just rings out for ages, and we had him say Welcome to the Jungle at the very end. So it just goes jungle, 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 jungle at the very end, and it just rings out to basically act as an outro. So yeah, apart from, actually one thing to mention is the break loop we used here, we've basically just completely used as a loop for the outro. So you can see it loops over and over at the outro there. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Welcome to the Jungle. There wasn't much mixing going on with the drums. Partly because this was one of the earlier pieces in terms of mixing, and also partly because digital samples, they didn't really need much doing to them. But yeah, that's Welcome to the Jungle. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hearing me just ramble on about serum patches and stuff. Yeah, hope you enjoyed watching this. Yeah, thanks for listening.